Picacho Peak State Park, Arizona. Good morning, friends. Another day, early day in Arizona. We find ourselves at Picacho Peak State Park this morning. It's a state park just over an hour south of Phoenix. And the trail we're on is just over 1.5 miles and gains just over 2,000 feet. So not long, but definitely steep. I mean, the expanse out here is great, and we're going way up there. There are a few sections, because of the slickness and smoothness of the trail, the rock, and the sheer steepness, install these big cable handrails. Give you a little bit of assistance. If you have good shoes and are fairly fit, you probably don't need those. But if it's slippery out, or if you need just a little bit of help, cables are nice to have. Another thing about these cables is they're real good for beginners to help stay on trail. They kind of aid as a trail guide. But they do recommend you wear gloves for this trail because of the cables. Now, it's not necessarily because you might rip up your hands. I mean, it may add into some grip for you. But in the afternoon, if you're going to get started late and the sun's been shining down here for a while, those cables get hot. Like hot, just like the rocks. I mean, this is Arizona. That's a Saturday morning sweat for you boys and girls, which for me, it doesn't take much. Picacho Peak, just FYI, it sits at 3,450 feet above sea level. Our elevation gain from where we started, 2,116 feet. So, in about 1.5 miles. So the verticals are definitely aggressive. And as we climb, the views just get better and better. We parked like right there. That's where we started this morning. So we've only been hiking for, 40 minutes, not long at all. But the elevation. And have I mentioned that uphills kick my ass? Another little tip while I breathe heavy at you. The Arizona state parks, especially the ones under 2 hours from Phoenix, Flatiron, Picacho Peak, there's a few others. They're extremely popular to the point where the trails are starting to erode and they have to put all this reinforcement in. Like, here's some rebar. There's some other things that they have done. But these places fill up fast. So it really is best to get here as early as possible. Avoid the crowds, avoid the heat. We've only seen one person come down since we started. So he must have got started really early. One group was ahead of us, and that's all we've seen. Now, when I look down the trail into the valley, there's probably 30 people back there, and it's still early, so I'm sure we're gonna be seeing a ton of people on their way up. So get here early. That way, there's less people to see you struggle. Pro tip. So we reached the saddle before it continues on up. It took us about 50 minutes to get here. So, you know, about a mile. So we did, you know, just over a mile an hour, which is pretty good up that scramble. She's a billy goat. But let's look over the other side. Now the breeze comes through. It's pretty sweet. Hard climbs, heavy breathing. It gets you views like this. And I think you're awesome for joining me today. Thank you for that. So that was part one, once you get to the saddle. If that first part was too difficult for you, then this is probably a good turnaround point. But you come over the saddle, around the backside here, goes on a steep decline, and then we go back up, and that's where they have these cables, and those you actually need. So if you're scared of heights, if you have anxiety about any of these kinds of things, this is not the section for you. But if you think you're capable enough, give it a go. Now we're on the back side of Picacho, and it goes up. It's a really calf burner, but we were headed up, and those cables are up there. Now, if you don't get here early enough, there's a line at those cables. You just gotta sit there and wait. These cables, they're in sections. So that was the first cable section on this part of the trail. Here's another one. It's pretty aggressive. There's another one until you reach the top. And it's very tight. There's no room to pass. There's no room for people to come down while people are coming up. That's where it can get really backlogged here. That's why it pays to get here early and get up here fast. The cables are done. We're in the high saddle here. There's some people starting to come down, more people coming up. So it's gonna be a little bit of a traffic jam on those cables on the way back down, I'm sure. But we're not to the top yet. Just switchbacks from here on up. And then food. We're at the top. A couple groups were coming down just as we were coming this way. So as of this moment, we're the only ones on the peak. A little lunch, had a great time on the peak. Now we're gonna kind of scramble back down because it's gonna be crowded, especially on those cables. You're gonna have to wait. It's gonna be a whole thing. And plus it's pretty sketchy, and holding a tripod, probably not the smartest thing in the world. So we're gonna book it down. I'll get some shots on the way. This is a great hike, very challenging, not too far from Phoenix. So if you're out here and you can get a day away, try it. Bring some gloves. Just about back to that first saddle. You can see a lot of people are on the way to the peak, so they got to go down this yet, back to the other side, and then through that whole cable system. So not quite rush hour, but I expect in the next hour it will be. Just to kind of recap a little bit. This morning, we came up that way from the parking lot, got to this first saddle, and then went over the saddle, down, and around, and we eventually ended up there. So there's the peak. So and it gets aggressive after this point. So again, if this first part was really, really hard for you, I'd stop here because it gets very aggressive after this. And as far as gloves go, I do recommend them. Those cables are pretty rough on your hands. You know, my hands are a little rougher than a lot because of what I do for work, but cable, a lot of people wearing leather gloves, and it really helps with grip, and it really helps with those cables because those cables are very, very grippy. Those steel threads can really dig into your palm. So gloves, I'd bring them for sure. But as they say, it's all downhill from here. That about wraps up this day hike. I appreciate you coming along. The Picacho Peak via the Hunter Trail. Awesome. Short, challenging hike. Very technical. Very worth coming out and visiting. But I appreciate you coming along. I'm glad you take the time out of your day to watch my shenanigans. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell notifications, hit the like button, you know, all that fun stuff. It really helps me out if you do that. But better yet, you get outside and find some trail time. And I'll see you on the next one. Pro tip, if your back is really, really sweaty and you need it to dry out, carry your backpack in the front.